In war's fierce fire, they spared not themselves, nor the strength they saved for their motherland's sake. The children of a heroic land were heroes, true heroes, without mistake. Robert Rojdestvinsky. Of the total number of Soviet citizens killed during the Great Patriotic War, nearly 14 million were civilians. It is extremely difficult to determine the exact number of women and children who died, but generally speaking, civilian casualties can be divided into three categories: those murdered by the occupiers, those who died in forced labor in Germany, and those who died of starvation and disease in the occupied territories. The Nazi invaders killed approximately 7.5 million people, including 221,000 children. To grasp this horrific figure, imagine that the Great Patriotic War lasted 1,418 days and nights. If we count the overall number of children murdered, more than 150 children died at the hands of the Nazi invaders every single day. More than 2 million people died as a result of forced labor, while over 4 million people died of starvation. The exact number of women who died is difficult to verify, but it likely also accounted for a significant proportion of civilian casualties. According to a quantitative study carried out by the Russian Federal State Statistics Service in 2020, the female population in the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic alone plunged by 847,000 during the war. During the war, the birth rate plummeted from 6.1 million in 1940 to 1.4 million in 1943. Tens of millions of children were involved directly in the conflict. More than 20 million children and teenagers worked in agriculture, in the fields and on the farms, and in factories behind the front lines, replacing the adults who had gone to the front and working from 14 to 16 hours a day. Children kept watch on rooftops to extinguish incendiary bombs, built defensive fortifications, and collected scrap metal and medicinal plants. More than 35,000 children received decorations and medals. Children often served in partisan detachments and in the Red Army. They were called sons of the regiment. A son or daughter of the regiment was a child taken in by a military unit. The term became popular in the USSR during the Great Patriotic War, following the publication of Kataev's novel Son of the Regiment. The son of the regiment were recruited in three ways: children left without parents during combat, children of commanders sent to the front line, and children who came to the front line on their own from the rear. The regiment's children performed various tasks, took part in reconnaissance, assisted in combat operations, and served as signalmen and medics. According to the archives of the Russian Ministry of Defense, there were approximately 3,500 young soldiers under the age of 16 on the front line during the Great Patriotic War. The youngest hero of the war was 6 years old, Serozha Alyoshkov, who saved his commander's life. Others included Alexander Eichmann, who fought in the Battle of Kursk at age 12, Pyotr Filinenko, who had served on the front line since age 11. He had said he was 2 years older when he joined, and also took part in the Battle of Kursk, and Arkady Kamanin, who had been flying fighter planes solo since age 14, completed over 600 missions, reached Vienna, and became the youngest participant in the victory parade on the Red Square. Hundreds of school-aged children took part in the partisan movement, worked behind the lines, and performed feats worthy of grown-up heroes. The theme of the Pioneer Heroes, children heroes and members of the Pioneer Organization, which included almost all children in the Soviet Union, is crucial to understanding the Soviet identity. In 1954, the list of the Pioneer Heroes was officially compiled with the release of the Book of Honor of the All-Union Pioneer Organization named after Lenin. Here are just a few names. Zina Portnova, a member of the Young Avengers underground organization, poisoned over 100 German officers in a canteen and endured terrible torture, but did not betray the partisans. Leona Golikov killed a German major general, obtained important military documents, and took part in 27 combat operations. Valia Kotek became the youngest hero of the Soviet Union, receiving the title at age 11. Valia played an active role in the partisan movement, conducting reconnaissance and gathering intelligence on enemy troops, transporting weapons, mining roads, and blowing up 6 trains. He discovered and helped destroy an underground telephone cable connecting Hitler's headquarters in Warsaw. In October 1943, he saved a partisan detachment by spotting a punitive detachment in time to sound the alarm. Many young heroes were decorated for their exploits, and 6 were awarded the title of Hero of the Soviet Union. Streets and schools were named after them, and monuments were erected in their honor. The stories of these young heroes were included in textbooks, films, and books were written and produced about them. Their heroic deeds remain an eternal example of selfless service to the motherland and a symbol of the people's unshakable will. The memory of these young heroes is not confined to the pages of history. It is a living example of how, in times of great hardship, even the youngest citizens are capable of great deeds in defense of their country. The Sons of the Regiment became a symbol of humanity and mutual support in times of war, an example of how the Army cared for orphan children. Their story shows that even in the most difficult times, people found ways to maintain their humanity and care for the next generation. In modern Russia, the tradition of the Sons of the Regiment has been revived and enshrined in law. Orphan boys aged 14 to 16 can become Sons of the Regiment, cadets in military units. An important requirement is the young person's desire and commitment to attend a military academy. The cadets receive all the necessary amenities and a salary just like other military personnel. Childhood during the Great Patriotic War exemplified courage, ingenuity, bravery, resilience, and tenacity of spirit. Many donated the money they had saved to buy toys and sweets to the defense fund. Here are a few examples of numerous similar cases. In February 1942, the editorial office of the newspaper Omskaya Pravda received a published letter from 6-year-old Ada Zanegina. My name is Ada Zanegina. I am 6 years old. I am writing in block capitals. Hitler has driven me out of the town of Suchovka in the Smolensk region. I want to go home. I'm small, but I know we have to defeat Hitler, and then we will go home. Mommy contributed her money for the tank. I saved 122 rubles and 25 kopecks for doll, and now I'm contributing my money for the tank. Dear editor, please write in your newspaper to all the children so that they donate their money for the tank. And let's call it Mayutka, little one. When our tank defeats Hitler, we will go home, Ada. My mommy is a doctor and my daddy is a tank driver. The girl's letter generated a huge response. For example, 6-year-old Alik Solodov wrote that he wanted to return to Kiev and donated 135 rubles and 56 kopecks, which he had been saving to buy boots. Tamara Loskutova wrote that her mother wanted to buy her a new coat, but she would continue to wear her old little coat, and donated 150 rubles for the Malyutka tank. A total of 160,886 rubles was ultimately raised for the construction of the tank. And the Supreme Commander-in-Chief of the Soviet Union, Marshal Stalin, sent a telegram of thanks to the preschool children in Omsk with the words, "My warmest greetings of gratitude to the Red Army." The T-62 Malyutka tank rolled off the assembly line at the Stalingrad shipyard in spring 1943 and reached Prague and even Berlin, according to some sources. Its commander was the Soviet female tank commander and warrior Sergeant Yekaterina Petlyuk of the 56th Tank Brigade, who had fought in the Battle of Stalingrad and had been awarded numerous military decorations and medals. In 1975, 30 years after the war ended, the girl who had written the letter and the tank commander met in Omsk. Together, they visited Smolensk, Ada Zanegina's hometown, and children from the school in Omsk welcomed them with gifts. Yekaterina received a miniature of the Malyutka tank, and Adela received that doll she had always been dreaming of since childhood, and for which she had been saving up her money. Another example is a letter from Vadik and Valery Storm to Stalin about the donation of 64 rubles to the Defense Fund for the construction of a submarine, February 1943. Dear Comrade Stalin, Valeric and I have saved 64 rubles to buy skates. We're sending this money to you for the submarine. It is very expensive, but I will speak to all the kids. They will help, and we will build the submarine to defeat the Germans. Vadik Sturm, Valeric Sturm, awaiting your reply. There are no precise details about what happened ultimately with this money, but it was likely used to build a medium Srednaya class diesel-electric submarine, which cost over 12 million rubles. We already know how things turned out with the Malyutka tank. According to some sources, between 1943 and 1945, more than 15 tank columns, 9 named tanks, 7 air squadrons, 5 named aircraft, 2 submarines, a torpedo boat detachment, and an armored train were built with donations from children. Millions of Soviet children endured the hardest trials of life, including evacuation, orphanhood, bombing, destroyed villages and towns, famine, living in enemy camps, and slavery. Anna Akhmatova wrote, "They have dug trenches in the garden, and the lights are out. Oh, Petersburg orphans, oh, my children. Under the earth we breathe badly. Pain beats in our ears. Above the whistling of the shell, we hear the crying of the child." The Siege of Leningrad is one of the most tragic episodes of the Great Patriotic War. The city was sieged by German and Finnish troops, along with volunteers from Spain and the Italian Navy. The city was cut off from the outside world, subjected to constant bombardment, and the inhabitants suffered terrible starvation. Between 400,000 and 500,000 children remained in besieged Leningrad, living under bombardment in the cold and hunger for 872 days. The evacuation began in the early days of the war. From June 1941 to April 1942, 1,295,100 people were evacuated. But between 120,000 and 160,000 children died during the bombardments on ships sunk in Lake Ladoga or went missing. Despite the unbearable conditions, the children continued to study at schools, air raid shelters, and apartments. Nurseries, creche, and schools remained open. In recognition of their heroism, more than 5,000 children were awarded the For the Defense of Leningrad Medal. 2,000 received the Partisan of the Great Patriotic War Medal, and many were decorated for military service. Monuments commemorating the tragedy have been erected in St. Petersburg and other Russian cities, and the Children of Leningrad campaign is held annually. One of the most famous diaries from the Siege of Leningrad is that of Tanya Savecheva. She was 11 years old in 1941, which she wrote from December 1941 to May 1942. Tanya never found out that not all her family members had died. Her brother Misha and her sister Nina survived. She was the one who found the diary and donated it to the Hermitage. The diary was later presented at the Nuremberg trials as evidence of Nazi crimes. It contains just 9 entries with facts that merit careful reading. Zhenya died on December 28, 1941 at 12:30 a.m. Grandma died on January 25, 1942 at 3 p.m. Leka died on March 17, 1942 at 5 a.m. Uncle Vasya died on April 13, 1942 at 2 a.m. Uncle Lyosha died on May 10, 1942 at 4 p.m. Mommy died on May 13, 1942 at 7:30 a.m. The Savichevs are dead. Everyone is dead. Only Tanya remained. The fate of the children living in the territories of the USSR occupied by the Nazis was tragic and fraught with suffering. They faced mass starvation and cold, which led to a sharp rise in mortality, forced labor, performing the most arduous tasks for the German occupiers, forced deportation to Germany to be used as laborers, and concentration camps where they were used as blood donors, subjected to medical experiments, and exterminated in gas chambers. The Salaspils concentration camp, which began operating in October 1941 in Soviet Latvia, became notorious. Initially, the camp was intended to exterminate Jews, Gypsies, and anti-fascists, but from March 1943 onwards, children from Belarus and northwestern Russia began to be taken there en masse. Life in the camp became a living hell for the children. Each child was given a number instead of a name and kept in strict isolation. Babies were looked after by girls aged 5 to 8. There was a lack of basic care and medical assistance, and crying or asking for help was forbidden. The Nazis used the children in horrific medical procedures and experiments. Blood was systematically drawn more than 500 mils a day for SS officers, and the children were subjected to mutilating surgeries and exposure to poisons. Of the 12,000 children taken to the camp, more than half died. After regaining independence in the post-Soviet era, Latvia attempted to revise the history of the Salaspils concentration camp. A book was published in the country claiming that the camp was merely a transit point through which approximately 22,000 people passed. However, this information contradicts official Soviet data on more than 100,000 deaths, including 7,000 children. Latvian historians downplay the death toll and attempted to portray the massacres as a misunderstanding, while the authorities ignore commemorative events. This policy aims to cover up the Nazi criminals and downplay the tragedy of thousands of innocent people. Recognizing the tragic fate of the children remaining in occupied territories, the Soviet leadership took unprecedented measures to rescue them. One of the largest operations was the evacuation of over 3,200 children from the occupied Smolensk region in the summer of 1942. This complex mission was led by 23-year-old partisan Matriona Volskaya, who was assisted by 2 brave aides. They had to lead a column of children along a deadly 200-kilometer route through impenetrable forest, waterlogged marshes, and mined areas. The operation took place under extremely difficult conditions. The children were constantly under the threat of being detected by enemy patrols and subjected to aerial bombardment. Along the way, they had to endure severe hardships. Wild plants were often their only source of food. Despite all the difficulties, the column arrived safely at Tarapet station, from where the children were taken to an evacuation train. This operation went down in history as one of the largest and most successful examples of the rescue of the children who were to be deported to Germany during the Great Patriotic War, and demonstrates the highest level of organization and dedication among those who carried it out. Families survived and endured the horrors of war while trying to support one another and keep in touch. The following is a letter dated August 8, 1944 from Yelena Daneyeva, a researcher at the State Museum of Literature, to an unknown recipient inquiring about the time and the circumstances of the death of the Tarantov family in Simferopol. About a month ago, I received news from Simferopol of the death of the entire family of Tarantov, who lived at 8 Gogolevskaya Street. Almost simultaneously, the USSR People's Commissariat for Defense informed me of the death of his son, Joseph, who died in February 1943 as a result of his injuries. Joseph Tarantov was a friend of mine for many years, and I'm deeply concerned about the fate of his family. I kindly ask you to inform me when and under what circumstances the Tarantov family died. I shall be very grateful. On the reverse side was a note in response to the execution of the entire Tarantov family by the Germans on December 29, 1941. The renowned Soviet children's poet Agnieszka Barto was evacuated to Sverdlovsk during the war. She traveled to the front lines as a correspondent, appeared at the front and on the radio, and published a collection of poems called Adolescence. After the war, she presented the radio program Find a Person, which used children's memories to search for lost parents. More than 900 families were reunited thanks to this program. We have often spoken of talented and heroic women. The Great Patriotic War shows that the great victory has a woman's face. More than 800,000 women fought on the front lines as snipers, anti-aircraft gunners, scouts, partisans, pilots, and medics. Behind the lines, women looked after the home and raised their children. 90 women were awarded the title of the Hero of the Soviet Union. 18-year-old Zoya Kosmendemyanskaya A schoolgirl who had volunteered for the Red Army received the award posthumously. During another mission, she was captured and, despite being tortured and abused, refused to reveal military secrets. To intimidate the population, Zoya was hanged in front of the whole village on November 29, 1941. The Germans prevented Zoya's body from being buried for almost a month and desecrated it. She demonstrated exceptional courage and a willingness to give her life for the homeland, making her feat a symbol of the unshakable bravery of the Soviet people. Her heroic death in 1941 not only boosted the morale of the Soviet soldiers, but also inspired them to fight against the enemy. Her younger brother, Alexander, was also awarded the title of the Hero of the Soviet Union for dying while fighting for his homeland. The significance of Zoya's heroic act remains relevant to this day, serving as an example of patriotism, self-sacrifice, and the strength of the human spirit, and also inspiring new generations to demonstrate courage and loyalty to their principles. Furthermore, her image has transcended Russia's borders and become a symbol of the struggle for freedom in national liberation movements in other countries. For example, in Cuba, her name was given to the female guerrilla fighters who died heroically during the Cuban Revolution, emphasizing the universal value and timeless significance of her heroic act as a symbol of courage and selflessness. Another one of the many heroic feats performed by women was that of Yekaterina Zelenko, who attacked a German fighter with her bomber on September 12, 1941. She was killed but destroyed the enemy aircraft. Zelenko's attack was the only one in history of aviation carried out by a woman. In 1941, the Red Army suffered significant losses, and the military air force urgently needed engineers and pilots. In October 1941, the USSR's People's Commissar of Defense issued an order on the formation of women's aviation regiments with a top-secret designation. One of these regiments was the 588th 9th Aviation Regiment, which became a Guards Regiment in 1943 and received the new number 46. During the war, the Germans nicknamed them the Night Witches because their aircraft would appear suddenly and silently. These planes are making our lives difficult. We can't even light a fire or a stove. The U-2s spot the fire immediately and drop their bombs. To avoid casualties, we're forced to stay in the trenches all night. Wehrmacht soldiers reported the female pilots of this regiment flew over 23,000 combat missions, dropping bombs on German positions from plywood aircraft. They loaded the bombs and cargo beneath the aircraft, whose total weight sometimes exceeded 300 kilograms. Irina Dragana, a pilot of the regiment, recalled, "Once a crew returned from a mission in an aircraft with 30 bullet holes, shot up landing gear, and damage to the central section and fuselage. The pilots were certain they would be without an aircraft for about 3 days, but their female mechanic comrades managed to repair the plane in 10 hours. The Night Witches flew until the end of the war, supporting the landings on the Kerch Peninsula, liberating Sevastopol, Crimea, Belarus, and Poland, and taking part in combat operations in East Prussia and on the River Oder. 23 pilots from the Air Regiment were awarded the title of Hero of the Soviet Union. During the war, more than 300,000 women served in the Red Army's medical units. They treated over 10 million wounded soldiers, although 1 in 3 medical workers died or went missing. These women demonstrated exceptional heroism. They carried more than 72% of the wounded soldiers from the battlefield, worked under constant bombardment and attacks, and saved lives in the most adverse conditions. Here are just a few of these heroines. Fyodora Pushina died while rescuing wounded soldiers from a burning hospital, having managed to save more than 30 of them. Valeria Ganarovskaya sacrificed her life to save 70 wounded soldiers by throwing herself under an enemy tank. The combat career and heroic deeds of Nurse Ludmila Kravets deserve special mention. Kravets demonstrated exceptional courage on the front line. Between 7th and 20th of January 1943 alone, she carried 64 wounded soldiers and commanders from the battlefield, all of them armed. Ludmila was seriously wounded 5 times. After each injury, she returned to duty despite her injuries, including wounds to both hips and subsequent gangrene. The pinnacle of her heroism occurred during the Battle of the Outskirts of Berlin in April 1945. When the commander of the 1st Rifle Company was incapacitated during the fighting, Ludmila Kravets took command and successfully led the company against the fortified enemy lines. For her heroism, she was awarded the title of the Hero of the Soviet Union. Kravets fought throughout the war until its victorious conclusion and reached Berlin, becoming a shining example of courage, selflessness, and devotion. A remarkable scientific achievement in the quest to defeat the enemy was the urgent development of the first Soviet antibiotic by a team of scientists led by microbiologist Zenaida Yermolaeva. Under wartime conditions, where every minute counted, in 1942, the first Soviet penicillin was developed and proved highly effective in treating sepsis, pneumonia, and gas gangrene. The results were impressive. The drug saved the lives of patients who had been given a death sentence. And when compared to its foreign counterpart, the Soviet strain proved to be more effective, 28 units per 1 ml versus 20. The development of domestic penicillin was a major breakthrough in medicine that saved the lives of countless wounded soldiers and made a huge contribution to victory. The fate of the women during the war was widely reflected in post-war Soviet culture. One of the most striking examples is the story of the selfless anti-aircraft gunners and their commander during the Great Patriotic War in Boris Vasilyev's book, The Dawns Here Are Quiet. The plot unfolds as follows. In 1942, Sergeant Major Ferod Vaskov and a detachment of 5 female anti-aircraft gunners wage an unequal battle against 16 German saboteurs in the forests of Karelia. During the heroic defense, all the women perish, and Vaskov, seriously wounded, mustering his last strength, captures the remaining enemies and brings them back to his patrol squad. The work was adapted for the cinema in 1972 by director Stanislav Rostotsky. The film was one of the biggest Soviet box office hits of 1973, seen by approximately 66 million people, became a landmark of Soviet cinema, and at the start of the 21st century, established itself as the most popular classic about the Great Patriotic War. Notably, in 1973, it was nominated for an Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film. The war left its mark on history, not only through the dates of battles and casualty figures, it also captured thousands of human stories in which children and women faced the relentless reality of war. Their fates combined the seemingly incompatible: childlike courage, feminine resilience, and the everyday heroism that became the norm. In times of war, the weak become strong, the small become responsible, and the loving become fearless. And it is these stories steeped in pain and heroism that remind us that true human strength is revealed in the moments of greatest trial, leaving an indelible mark on the memory of generations. Courage, selflessness, and an unshakable faith in the triumph of good.